Hello, my name is Nicole Johnson. I'd like to welcome you to Recruiting Trends Best Practice Series for today's presentation, Recruiting Passive Tech Talent in Today's Competitive Landscape. We just have a few housekeeping notes before we begin. A recording of the presentation will be available on recruitingtrends.com within the next several business days. To ensure call quality, everyone's lines have been muted, but we do encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation. Please type your questions into the chat box and hit send to submit them. Presenters will answer questions as time permits. If they are unable to answer all of your questions within our allotted time, we will make sure that you receive follow-up post-webinar. The chat box on the lower hand side of your screen is for both questions and technical support issues. We will hold all questions until the Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. If you have any issues with the audio during the presentation, please note that audio is provided through your computer speakers. If you are still having issues, please click on the Request Phone button on the top right-hand side of your screen to get teleconference information. If you are disconnected, you can log on again using the instructions provided in your initial confirmation email. If you continue to experience difficulty, please email webinars@recruitingtrends.com. If you would like to follow us, you can do so at #OurTrends or @RecruitingTrends. Shravan, our speaker, will be sharing his desktop, actually an application, and when the speaker does that, it may take a few seconds to load, so please be patient. And for some of you, the webinar window might minimize on your desktop, so you would just need to look for the blue and green WebEx ball on the bottom of your desktop and click on that to maximize it again. This webinar is approved for one recertification credit hour through HRCI. If you have not already requested credit upon registration, please email jill.adler@meetingmatters.com. Her email will also appear on our last slide. We would like to thank our sponsor today, Dice, for providing us with this great webinar. And at this time, I would like to introduce and welcome our moderator for today, Anna Brecka, Director, Recruiting Trends. Welcome, Anna.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and thank you for joining us today. We're excited to share this tech recruiting webinar with you all. I had the pleasure of working with DICE and asking some great questions to you as you were registering for this webinar. So Nicole, if you just would advance the slide. And this is what we asked. What are your pain points when it comes to finding tech talent? And we had 5 options for you. You could select 1, you could select 2 or 3 or more. And here are the results. 60% of you says that one of the most frustrating searches, problems you have in your searches is unresponsive candidates. 40% of you said everyone going after the same candidates. You also said that too much time is spent on reaching and identifying the potential candidate. 32% felt that incomplete and outdated profiles was an issue. And at last, 30% said that finding personal emails was also very, very hard. The sad truth is that 14% of you said that you're dealing with up to 4 of these 5 issues. Finding personal email address, too much time spent on research to identify a potential candidate, unresponsive candidates, and everyone going after the same candidate. This is a lot of hurdles to go through, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you 3 great presenters today who should be able to help you through the maze of finding great tech talent. I'm actually going to start from bottom up with Brooke Anderson, Senior Recruiter, University Relations of FireEye. Brooke has spent the last 9 years in recruiting. She started in search and has now evolved into a serious recruiter who is known for her in-depth analysis and finding the best. Today, we are also joined by Jeff Winter, who's the CEO of People Gravity. Gravity Search is located in San Francisco, and Jeff brings over 14 years of experience and has particularly narrowed in on tech recruiting as well. Then today, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce the new president of Daesh, Shravan Goli. I had the pleasure of hearing Shravan presenting at Talent 42, and I would say a Silicon vet and a tech vet, Shravan has quickly understood what we are up against here in the recruiting industry. With that, I'd like to hand over the presentation to Shravan and let him tell us a little bit about Open Web today. Shravan?
Thanks, Anna. It's a pleasure to be talking to you guys today. Just so you know, this is the first time I'm doing a webinar, so if I goof up anything, I apologize in advance. But hopefully we'll have a real fun and engaging conversation here in this setting. So I'm going to play with the slides at the same time here. So am I in control of this? There we go. All right. So I'm excited to talk about this topic around recruiting passive technology talent. Technology being such a competitive landscape, it gives me a great pleasure that DICE being right at the center of this technology employment, we're well positioned to understand the landscape in a lot of ways. So I would like to share some data that we've found along the way as a result. And I also acknowledge for you guys as recruiters, finding skilled passives, especially, the passive recruiting is something that has really caught up, but finding skilled passives, and as you guys responded back to the survey, looking at the data, it is hard to find people who are going to be responsive on top of it. And there are hundreds of sites you can use to source candidates, but honestly, we don't have time to do that. You can go Google, but it's a very inefficient way of doing it. On top of it, as for the survey, again, the research is one part, but the ability to be able to directly contact these candidates and the ability to get them to respond is really where the rubber meets the road. So over the next 30, 40 minutes, between me and Jeff and Brooke, we're going to give you some tips to help solve some of these problems. We'd like to share some tools for accessing even more passives quickly and efficiently, but also how you can actually get higher hit rates and response rates from these candidates by utilizing the information that is going to be in front of you. So I want to, before I go into a demo of our latest tool, which is DICE Open Web, I wanted to share some of the trends in technology hiring. And this is kind of very interesting data as well, and that's highly relevant for you guys especially. So I think one of the big things that's happening today is the skill sets and the technologies are evolving even more rapidly. And if you look at just the number of things that are on the screen, none of these barely existed 10 years ago. And so as a result, sort of the demand, not only the demand for technology professionals is high, also presenting a bigger challenge because the things are evolving so fast. I mean, before that, it used to be like a PC. Yes, you had internet, but you had a limited number of programming languages, but almost like a single device to work against. And this whole concept of cloud, services, the scale, big data, all of these things, did not even exist. And so as a result, the challenges and the problems were different, but the magnitude and the scale now you're facing is much, much higher, in my opinion. And then with these technologies, you as recruiters are also becoming very smart in leveraging these technologies. So as a result, all of you are searching for talent with these in-demand skills, but you're also trying to leverage these means to get in front of these people as fast as you can. And so the competitive advantage, where does the competitive advantage come for each of you as a result? So I think Anna's survey and what she talked about, you have identified clearly, the top 5 things that are really, I think, problematic from a recruiting standpoint. So I'm not going to reiterate some of this stuff, but you're also dealing with lots of non-responsive candidates because a lot of people are hitting them these days. And for example, as we know, from a time it takes to fill the in-demand positions, it's got elongated. The industry average for a developer job posting is about 7 weeks, but that's just collecting resumes and starting interviews. You're easily looking at about 3 months before you have someone hired, according to Wanted Technologies. So how can you get ahead of the game if you have to do this 3 months at a time for each of the candidates? The other factor I think that's contributing overall is the technology unemployment rate versus the overall unemployment rate. As you can see, the overall U.S. unemployment rate, back from a Q2 data standpoint, this is from Bureau of Labor Statistics, 7.6 across all of the industries. Technology for Q2 averaged about 3.6%, and based on the skill set, it's lower. Like network and systems administrators, which is 1.1%, and as you look at like these other categories, you see they're substantially below the overall unemployment rate. And that's not news for you overall, but it just kind of shows as you look at each of these categories, it gives you a better insight into the problems you're running into based on the type of the position you're filling. The other thing that has happened also, not exactly sort of the same as in the 2001 boom time, but the salaries have gotten hefty. Especially as I sit in Silicon Valley here, the competition for talent is intense, and I'm starting to see some sort of irrational exuberance, if you will, in terms of the salaries and the packages and the benefits and all of that stuff. We're not there back to that crazy time, but it does. The heat is on. Some of these big data skills are demanding north of $100,000, even if you're just like 1-2 years experience. Cloud and virtualization, about 90,000, and I'm talking about national averages. This is not just Silicon Valley specific, but national averages. In Silicon Valley, you will obviously be paying more, but on an average basis, this is what we heard. And so, if you think about the real estate thing that happened over time, it went from seller's market to buyer's market to seller's market now again. And so we're sort of in this notion with technology professionals now. We went into, we're not there all the way, but we're getting, when you look at nationwide, we're getting to the point of the technology professional is in the driver's seat, especially the ones that you're really chasing. So, and they're looking for compelling projects to work on. They're looking for ways to innovate and opportunities to advance their skill sets. So it's no longer just, the type of the job, but it's really about the potential for advancing whatever their passion is and whatever their interest is. And so as a company, as a recruiter, you have to think about how you're projecting not just, who they are, but also knowing more about the industry, knowing more about the skill sets, knowing more about them, these candidates, will help you have better conversations. The other thing that's interesting that drives this engine from an employment standpoint is the turnover, as you all know. And this is a chart that shows over the last 13 years the turnover chart. So the higher the spike in the chart, it represents the higher turnover, and it essentially represents the number of people that change the job. And the category that you're seeing here is the professional and business services, which is where the technology sector is captured from BLS data again. And as you can see, up until 2008, you see this blue line is just about the average overall, and it just kind of fell through the recession period, and it's starting to slowly get back into sort of an average line. Average line is about 402,000 in terms of voluntary quits. So that's about 402,000. In April and May of this year, we saw this number cross 400,000 again after probably like 4 or 5 years. And so what you typically see in a recovery is a spike past the average, and until then, people are generally hesitant to quit during a recession, but when their confidence builds up, they want to explore other opportunities. So that's, it's good news, bad news, if you will. The good news is that people are more willing to move because you're not putting more supply rapidly into this market, as we all know, with the other debate that's going on. And so the churn and the turnover is actually going to help in hiring people. And at the same time, it's also going to affect negatively from a company standpoint. Obviously, you got to do other things to keep employees happy and all that stuff. But that's a topic for another day. So with this, a couple other stats that could be interesting for you on the positive side also. The job market for tech professionals has been the prominent driver for the recovery. And from our survey earlier this year that we've done, it appears that tech is continuing to, is poised to do that on an ongoing basis. In the second half of the year, we're seeing that almost three quarters of the employers are projected to hire more technology professionals. This is compared to 64% of recruiters said they expected this to increase just 6 months ago. And then also, I think there are more tech professionals are testing the market. 1/3 of the corporate recruiters said more tech pros are voluntarily quitting their positions as compared to last year. So again, this falls in line with the BLS numbers we just talked about. And at the same time, 32% of the respondents noted that more candidates are rejecting job offers than they were just 6 months ago. So this was an employer survey, and so definitely pay scale is clearly driving a force in accepting a new position. When the initial job offer was declined or negotiated, 42% of hiring managers said their initial salary offer was about 5% below candidates' expectations, and 15% said it was 10% below the expectations. So, I think you've got to get not only smart in terms of sourcing, we also need to get really smart in terms of attracting them to ultimately come and work for you guys, right? And so the more you know these kinds of things, the more information you have in your hands, the better equipped you will be in successfully recruiting these candidates. So given all these challenges and the impact from the economy, the social media also has had it, it sort of has become more difficult than ever in terms of getting this talent. So we wanted to share with you, this new tool. It's been in beta for almost 7 months now, and we have some customers actively using it. And so Jeff and Brooke happen to be one of those customers, and look forward to them sharing their experience using this tool as well. So what I'm going to do is walk you through what is called as Dice Open Web. And Open Web essentially brings a comprehensive view of candidates by aggregating publicly available data about candidates from over 50 different sources today. And the sources include, from a tech standpoint, things that matter the most as well, which is, GitHub, Stack Overflow, Quora, Meetups, all kinds of different interesting sources, along with sort of the social aspects of it, with Facebook, Twitter, and other sources of information. So what does that bring to you guys when we do this aggregation of data and kind of pulling all this information about a candidate to present to you a comprehensive view? What it brings you is three things. One is more unique candidates. So, normally if I'm looking at you guys, I would ask this question and I would like to take a tally of the hands, but you may want to just kind of think about this yourself as I ask this question. So how many times would you use more than 5 social and professional sources for candidate sourcing? 15? More than 15. So how about 50, right? And so that's where we are. With so many sources, we're not only bringing more candidates, but also getting you more unique candidates. And if you think about sort of the point that you made, the research being inefficient and time-consuming, this is the technology that is going to not only bring all of those candidates, but also provide you that single point of access and efficiency. So that's the second point here. So with each of these candidates' profiles connected to their unified open web profile, you don't need to go and search on multiple places. You don't need to go and look at, like, how do I assess this candidate based on both, sort of the technical skills, but also, more importantly, all the other social and professional skills. Last but not least, it does not solve the problem. You said 60% of the issue is unresponsiveness, right? And so ultimately, what this technology is delivering, and which our customers talking about who have figured out how to use this, it is giving them really high response rates. We'll talk about that. So that's what is deriving the value from open web: more unique candidates, single point of access, and high response rates. So I'm going to give you a quick demo through my browser here of how the open web works, and then I'll have Jeff and Brooke jump on after that. So I'm going to get that set up quickly here. If you can bear with me. Okay. So hopefully all of you are able to see this screen. So I'm on dice.com. For those of you who are familiar with Dice, historically, you have used us to search the resume database, do the job postings and all of that stuff. I'm just going to get this set up. We log in here. So this is your classic Dice experience, but today I'm going to show you the open web. So here I am searching for Ruby on the Rails in Boston, Massachusetts. Just picked this city randomly here, and we just want to see what does open web offer when I search for Ruby on the Rails, which turns out one of the hot skills as such. So when I go through this, what you'll see is there are about 3,269 people, and you can see the list of all of the professionals, technology professionals with Ruby on the Rails skill. But what you will also notice here is as I look at this, all these different sources of data that it has aggregated about these people. And the other thing that you will notice is, Dice being in business for over 20 years, we also have lots of richer resume data as well. And so when you marry those two, you will get even more deeper profile information. And so wherever we have that ability, wherever we have the resumes, we've integrated that into the open web profile, and you will see that that's also accessible right there. So we have merged all of this information into one unified profile. So let's take a look at what does a profile look like for this person, Peter Jackson. And so essentially what this is doing is it's merging all of the information between the social and the resume data in this case, and you can see very quickly what the current title is, the education, last activity date on DICE, what the relocation thing and U.S. citizen and all that stuff. But then we've also aggregated all of the skills, and this is a combination of skills that they have expressed and showed and activated on all these other 50 different sources, along with, because we have resume, we've merged all of that stuff. But you're able to get this, more detailed information, which is, last used in 2012, years of experience 5, all of that stuff. And you can scroll through in more skills. But the key thing here is you can actually access all of these profiles right from here as you wish. It kind of also aggregates all the information around tweets and the other stuff here. So with this, you have, like, for example, I could just go to Gravatar very quickly here, and I can see, I can get to the Gravatar profile for Pete here as well. I can go to Twitter, I can go to Flickr, I can go to GitHub. So here's Pete on GitHub. So one of the things is, as you go around, you want to understand what these candidates do in all these places. We're working on improvements to this profile that will make it even more easier on that context. So, for example, if you look at Dave Levine, which we don't have a resume data, but this is all the open web data, for example. Here, again, you'll see sort of the similar nature of information. And the interesting thing is, whether it is integrated or not, you have the ability to contact these people right here through email or Twitter or Facebook. And one of the things that recruiters are looking at these days is going beyond these sort of the standard means of engaging these candidates. And so social channels have been underutilized so far in terms of engaging the candidates. And so you fall back on email or you fall back on phone, but I think there is a real opportunity to look at how you can engage these candidates uniquely on Twitter and Facebook. So what we have seen so far is you've seen a lot more candidates, and you've seen the ability to connect and engage with these candidates and assess them from their skills as well as their, the other professional aspects, their climber, geospatial nerd, originally from DC. So you may have a connection point based on their interest, based on their activities, that you can use this information, and ultimately when you actually contact and engage them, you are able to leverage that information. So what if you could actually say, well, I noticed you're a climber. I used to be a climber, or I climbed Mount Rainier, or whatever. You will have a better engaging conversation. And that is how our customers are getting higher response rates on top of it. So this is the third part of it. And the response rates are sometimes in north of 30%. And that's because they're able to leverage all of this information. You may be able to download their app and test it out, or you may look at their contributions in Stack here and say, oh, wow, you're a serious Android developer, and how you utilize this information in that engagement can set you apart. And so that's where this thing is at this point. What we call about in terms of unique candidates, single point of access, higher response rates. One last thing I wanted to just very quickly share is, since we talked about GitHub, you as a technology recruiter, you are going to certain sites because you're trying to find the candidates over there. We recognize that. But the idea here is that you would still want to get the contact information. You would still want to get the 360 view of this person, no matter where you find them. So we launched a browser extension for Chrome for Dice Open Web wherein, I just went to GitHub. I'll just refresh this. Notice that, there's the icon looks like this, and I'm just going to refresh Kate on Rails here in the browser. You'll see that it changed blue. That's because we recognize Kate is on Dice Open Web. And so now you can just very quickly go to view their full profile. Another thing that you always do is look at your internal ATS database, and you have an email address. And so if you're looking at your internal ATS through the browser, you can highlight the email, and you can very quickly get the access to the Open Web profile. So the idea here is that we are going to enable discovery of the candidates anywhere, everywhere, as you're doing your research and search. And so going back and kind of looking at all of the points that you guys made, essentially, is what Open Web is addressing by making it very, very efficient, by expanding the set of the candidates that you can go after. And our technology is doing all of the hard work in the background in filtering the candidates and in getting the right candidates in front of you based on the searches you're doing, and then ability to contact them, and then as a result get higher response rates. So, with that, I wanted to invite Jeff Winter from GravityPeople to share his experience using Dice Open Web. Jeff?
Thank you, Shravan. So I guess to start, going back to some of these survey results, we'll use that, I guess, is the crux of this. I think as a recruiter, we've all had unresponsive candidates, and that seems to be the biggest issue in attracting at least some dialogue with people, or some of the top tech talent. Now, I focus primarily on really hard to fill. Well, everything's hard to fill, right? Hard to fill more technical architect level roles within specified sectors, and reaching people that have a bunch of, say, for instance, Ruby keywords on their profile has been very, very challenging in that they're hard to find under one comprehensive dashboard, or they were, and OpenWeb's been very good in that regard in helping identify the Ruby people. It takes it a step further. It also provides me some insight into their, I guess, personal behaviors, some of their likes, their dislikes, hobbies, I don't know, where they like to eat in San Francisco, what they tweet about. All this is very important because when you first go to reach out to a particular candidate, you want to have something to fall on besides the fact that, hey, you're a Ruby person, I'm doing a Ruby architect search, and I want to talk to you about blah, blah, blah. How many, they probably get, I don't know, 20 emails a week on that alone, and then who knows how many emails, who knows how many calls, and those are just passive, or, not even candidates that are looking around. So I like to be able to message a candidate in such a way where they feel like, I live in the same area, they like particular things that I like, and try to establish some sort of dialogue. They're probably a little bit more apt to respond to you if you've read a blog, or if you've, recently, or taken a look at their Twitter and seen what they've been tweeting about. So I found that that's been, very, very good in at least beginning dialogue. I've seen a lot more responses just by personalizing messages, and good and bad. And a response is a response in my mind. It's the next step in actually, reaching out to that person 2 to 3 months down the road, or perhaps a year later, they may still remember you. At least it's opening up a channel. And OpenWeb's actually allowed me to work a little bit more in the social recruiting realm, which I haven't been really receptive to in the past, but because it's so easily acceptable to, tweet with a candidate or something that would, open up that dialogue, it's been very good. I've kind of crossed the line on that. I'm starting to look at that a little bit more. And it's been easier to do just because it's available under one dashboard. So that's I don't know if this is helpful or
Certainly helpful, Jeff. We'll wait some questions from them as well. Anything else you want to add to that?
Well, I've seen a couple different things that maybe, I've seen with the higher response rates, I've seen a little bit quicker time to fill in a lot of regards. The people that are actually getting back to me have been, because they like what I have to say. I'm seeing higher quality candidates coming to me, and since they have that initial interest in the role or the company, they are a little bit more receptive to actually taking an offer if they can get to the finish line. I've probably, it's been a little bit of a touch and go early on. It took me a little while to streamline my process because I was seeing a lot more candidates that were applicable, and I had to narrow down the search a little bit based on hobbies, for instance. But all in all, it's been a very, very good tool for me, and I'm going to continue to use it.
Great. We appreciate your sharing the experience. I would like to invite Brooke Anderson to share her experience. Yeah. All right. There you go.
Brooke, are you there? And it looks like we have a small technical difficulty with Brooks, but it looks as we might be able to solve that. Brooks, are you there? No. While we wait for Brooks to jump in, Jeff, you have shared something that I thought was rather interesting with me yesterday, and that was the percentile of response that you had achieved after you started using Open Web. Could you share that number with the audience today, because that was rather remarkable?
Well, I think what was it? It was I started to get a lot higher results in the applicable candidates, or at least the profiles were a lot more applicable. I think it was something like, I believe I sent maybe, what was it exactly? I think I said I had about 80% send out to the search results that I had received. And all in all, I think I got about a 30% return, and 10% were positive. So it was pretty high.
It's a pretty remarkable change.
It was yeah. It's been good, but if you take a look at it, if you use Dice and Open Web for technical folks, it's the response rate is significantly higher than if you were using for non-technical product or marketing, because there's just fewer people involved in GitHub Stack Overflow. So maybe that's where the results are the search results are a little bit lower, but for Dice, technical folks, they reside on Open Web. They're a little bit more active in, GitHub, obviously, and Stack Overflow.
Yep. Okay. Good. Well, I just thought it was, metrics speaks volume, so I just wanted to make sure that we shared these pretty amazing numbers that you shared with us yesterday. Brooke, are you with us?
Yes, this is Brooke.
Hi, Brooke. All right, Shravan, I'll hand it back to you and Brooke.
Okay.
Thank
you. So yeah, as a technical recruiter and someone who is always put myself in the technologist mindset. If I was a technologist and I wasn't on LinkedIn or on the job boards, where would I be? So I started using the social networks with that in mind. If so, digging deeper as to more of most technologists, they communicate with each other, whether that be on maybe LinkedIn groups or something looks now like GitHub. Well, when I would start my searches, I would always go, to the open web to look at candidates. The open web is a place that you can fall in many, many holes and spend numerous amount of your time looking for a candidate or trying to find their email address or another social way to be able to connect with them or like Shravan said, learn about some of their personal interests. When I started using open web, I realized the amount of time that I was saving. First of all, just in my first search, looking at all the social profiles and having that right there all in one place was just incredibly useful for me to be able to to see their where they were, their interests, as well as multiple avenues to be able to connect with the candidates. So it's really kind of taking a linear approach to a deep analysis that you would receive on the open web.
Yep. You've had experience using it in different contexts, right? Compared to like what Jeff has done. Anything different from that perspective?
I'm not sure what you mean by context, but you mean for like social networks?
Right, as well.
Yeah, I think with social networks that definitely gives you the insight. I would say maybe on Twitter, not just seeing someone's interests, but being able to engage with the candidate in other ways than you were able to before. Not just sending a LinkedIn message, maybe following on Twitter and at mentioning when you see them, talk about a certain subject that you're able to, it resonates with you. So it's a little more passive approach, on the social networks than just sending a LinkedIn email where it just goes to their email, inbox. You're actually able to engage with them on a more personal level, and and then from there you're able to establish a relationship with them. And whether they're an exact fit for you or not, once you establish that relationship with them, they know who you are. It's a little bit easier to even ask for referrals. And referrals are one of the top ways of I would say of being able to find the right candidate.
Great.
They're able to see your profile, maybe see your Twitter profile as well as not just your LinkedIn page, but I think that's a good way of passively approaching candidates in technology.
Great. Well, thank you very much, both of you guys. Appreciate you sharing your experience, and we look forward to hearing more from you guys as well. We're going to move into Q&A. I'm going to hand it back to Anna, but I wanted to thank all the listeners for their time and giving us an opportunity to talk about this subject today.
Thank you, Shravan. And we do have some questions from our listeners. And before we go any further, though, I just want to make sure that you all know that this webinar is being recorded, and we will let you know when the recording is up. And we will also be able to share the slide deck with you with the recording once that is up, because we have quite a few questions about that. One of the things that have come up, and although we have covered it today, is how can you see the contact information through open web, DICE's open web? Do you get all their contact information, or is it or abstracted from what people have online anyway? Does DICE add contact information?
Yeah, good question. So with certain essentially open web is aggregating information from all these different sources, and it's all publicly available data. And so with that, just doing that, we are able to aggregate significant amount of contact information, and whether that is Twitter or Facebook or email to a large extent. The phone numbers, sometimes they are available as part of this publicly available data on some of these profiles or sources of information, but when we combine the resume data that we have, we certainly enrich the contact information to the next level. So in the example where I showed Peter Jackson, you had Twitter, Facebook, email, and phone. So Twitter and Facebook came from the social sources, as well as email, but we already had email. The phone number came from the resume side. So it really depends on which profile. There's some that will have less information, there'll be some that will have more.
Thank you very much. We have a very interesting question here, and if you feel good about answering that, that would be great. Can you please compare or contrast Open Web versus the LinkedIn recruiter tools? Shravan.
Yeah, so I'm not going to do this sort of a full deep dive of that, but I'll give you more of sort of my higher level perspective on this. So technology professionals tend to be more present in more technology-oriented sites. And so from what I know, the technology professionals are not actively updating their profiles on LinkedIn, but they're much more, interested in participating activities in Slack or Git or Quora or Twitter or Facebook, all these other places. So the really, when you think about it, the tool is just a way to access the information at the end of the day. It's really, the information is what you really care about and what you want to think about, how you want to think about this. And so what we are presenting is a 360 profile view of this person from over 50 sources today and a lot more coming very soon, that gives you sort of this diverse set of data about this candidate. And so you're not only able to assess sort of the professional side of the equation, the technical side of the equation, getting that extra contact information. It's hard to get the contact information on LinkedIn on top of it because, the professionals may not have shared, publicly made that information, but they may have made that information public somewhere else. And so if you do, you can get that through a Google search and crawling through all the 50 different sources. But the point here is focusing on the candidates and focusing on the technology professionals. The 360 profile view is a very comprehensive view. And then going beyond that, we're also really focused on only technology with Dice.com. And so we're able to build this engine that is powering open web to get smarter and smarter and smarter over time. So your searches become efficient, your response rates increase. So those are the numbers, those are the metrics I would encourage you guys to compare. From what I know, we're better in a lot of those metrics. But you can be the judge yourself. You're welcome to try out Dice Open Web. And if you're an existing Dice customer, it's already available to you in beta and it's free. If not, contact one of us and we'll try and get you on that.
Great. I have a very good question, and this is probably something all three of you could address one at a time. Karen is wondering, in case where you have a compressed timeline, how do you speed up the process of making contact and getting a response from passive candidates? Brooke, do you want to try to start out answering that question in your experience?
So the question was when you have a timeline out in front of you and you're starting your search, what are the tools and how am I able to get a quicker response rate back from passive candidates?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it depends on which tool I decide to use. If I see that the candidate is much more engaged on Twitter, I might send the candidate a message via Twitter or engage with them that way. So another thing that Open Web does is it shows me all of the candidates' tools and their most utilized tools. that gives me a much more, quicker insight as to the way that I should be able to receive a response back from a passive candidate.
Very clever. And Jeff, is that what you are finding too? And Shravan, do you want to add to that question? Okay, Jeff, there you are.
Yeah, I was sorry. I was talking to myself for a minute. I said, I'm a little bit more old school in that I would probably just go to the website, find the company number, and call the person at work.
Really?
Oh yeah. It's recruiting. You want an immediate response? That's how you go about it. So.
Yeah, and that's always obviously the number one way. But I also see the number amount of candidates or employees who are working remote. I'm a remote employee, so I don't even have I have a desk line, but I'm not there at the office. So there's much more of the remote employees where you're unable to even reach that candidate. So obviously I do see Jeff is number one to look for the number, but if you're unable to get a hold of them that way or receive that response, I see that social media is also a very strong way to connect.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah.
That's great. Now, Shravan, we have a few more questions to all of you, but let me just try to get some of them. Alfred says, has broker Jeff experimented contacting prospect candidates using multiple social media access points, sent same day or lagged, and do they generally prefer only one message only? So I guess it's a good question because Open Web gives you an idea of how many platforms the prospect candidate is on. It also gives you an idea of how active they are on the different platforms. So do you hit them on all 10 cylinders or one at a time? What is your experience and what do you recommend?
This is Brooke. Yeah. Well, each channel is a different approach, is a different way to connect. Some are a direct message. Twitter is messaging someone, via Twitter. So I think it really depends on what you see, how the candidate is most active on is the way that I would approach it. I might connect with them in maybe 2 or 3. Let's say if they have 10 social avenues shown on their open web, I might connect with them 2 or 3 out of the 10. But I don't try and go in a stalking mode and connect with them all immediately at once. I kind of use more of a passive, respectful approach.
And I would agree to that as well. At least from the first day, I think.
Yeah.
At least 3 points of contact, respectfully, maybe just 2, and then a couple of days later, hit them up again.
Okay. All right. So that's sort of, when to be pushy and when to be gentle. It's a dance.
Yes,
So,
it is.
Another thing too that I wanted to mention is the results that you see on the open web within DICE. Those are not necessarily candidates who have their resume posted on DICE. So you're actually able to see a list of candidates that might not have their resume posted but are out on the open web as well.
Okay, great. All right. Do you see more companies with the Future 500 using the open web tool or more agency-based companies? Shravan?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. Do we see more companies with the Future 500 using the open web tool or more agency-based companies?
I mean, at the end of the day, I look at it as this is a pervasive problem, right, from a recruiting standpoint and assembling technology talent perspective. And the goal for no matter who you are at the end of the day is to find the best candidates impossible. And whether you use sort of this notion of active versus passive, at the end of the day, as long as it gets you the best candidates, we won't worry about it. So in the same vein, I would think for all the companies, as long as this problem is acute, they have to figure out new ways of chasing the candidates and getting them over, right? So that's probably the more simplistic way to answer the question. The problem is pervasive.
Okay. All right. Well, before we come to an end, there is one question that keeps popping up, and that is a question about money. What does this cost? How do we get in? How do we find out the value of open web, and what are we in for?
Sure. Open web is in beta right now. It's free for all the existing DICE customers. If someone wants to try it out, they can reach out to me or Terry, and we'll figure out a way to get you guys on the beta. But ultimately, when we get out of the beta is when we're going to figure out the business model of it. But my keen interest is really getting this into people's hands and getting them to use it and benefiting from that, and then the rest will work itself out.
Okay. All right. So right now, if people reach out either to Terry or you, or if they reach out to Anna at Recruiting Trends, ANNA at recruitingtrends.com, I will forward your request if you don't happen to be already a DICE customer. And because we'll take you up on your word saying you are interested in getting people used to this and be part of the beta test.
Yeah, we'll set them up. We'll set them up with a quick trial. They can test it out as well.
Yep. Yep.
The one thing that I would think about as you look at evaluating any new thing, for that matter, given the cycle it takes from a technology recruiting standpoint, as well as depends on the type of the skill, type of the person, location. There's so many attributes that come into play. Don't be a judge very quickly. No matter what that is. And I'm saying you should experience it and figure it out ultimately. Because we're living in a world where the technology is going to enable and empower you in more ways, and you need to give it time for yourself to understand it and apply it in an effective way. Jeff and Brooke, they've been using it for a while now, if you will.
All right. Well, we are coming to a close, but we want to very, very much thank our sponsor again, DICE, and because they are good people, there is a bonus giveaway to all of you who are attended today. You will all be given the DICE Technical Hiring Guide. And I think particularly for some of our attendees today, this is going to be most useful because we did actually get some questions about how do you speak geek? And how do you talk to these people once you've gotten their attention? So this here should be a great guide for you. We will also email you. DICE will contact you and set you up on a beta test. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to DICE for supporting us today. Thank you to Jess Winter and Brooke Anderson, Shravan Goli for their presentation today. And again, if you have any questions or are looking for your HRCI, please contact us. The HRCI is still.adler@meeting-matters.com. This is Recruiting Trends webinar series, and we thank you, and come back and join us again soon.